My son was standing in the middle of our living room with tears running down his face, clutching an old, dusty notebook against his chest. My wife reached out to take it from him, but he screamed so loudly that it froze every one of us. "You can lie to Dad anymore, because I finally have proof." The fear on my wife's face lasted only a second, but that single second destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. But before we start today's story, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. My name is Daniel Carter, and I'm 42 years old. Until that moment, I believed my 10-year-old son, Ethan, was simply being stubborn. For 5 years, he had refused to call my new wife, Melissa, Mom. I thought he was holding on to the memory of his biological mother. I thought he needed more time. I thought love could heal anything. I was wrong. Sometimes children aren't being difficult. Sometimes they're trying to survive. 5 years earlier, my world had already fallen apart once. My first wife, Sarah, died in a car accident on a rainy October evening. One police officer knocked on my door. One sentence changed my life forever. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter." Everything after that became a blur. I barely remembered the funeral. I barely remembered the people who hugged me. The only thing I remember clearly was my 5-year-old son wrapping his tiny arms around my waist and asking, "When Mommy wakes up, can you tell her I love her?" No father is ever prepared to answer that question. For nearly 2 years, Ethan and I learned how to live without Sarah. Some days were easier, most weren't. I worked as an insurance investigator, which meant long hours and endless paperwork. Ethan spent afternoons with my older sister Rachel, until I came home. He became quieter after Sarah died. He stopped laughing as much. He slept with the hallway light on. Sometimes I'd hear him crying into his pillow, thinking I couldn't hear him. Those nights broke me. Then Melissa entered our lives. We met through mutual friends at a neighborhood barbecue. She was 34, kind, patient. She volunteered at an animal shelter every weekend and always seemed to know exactly what to say. The first time she met Ethan, she brought him a puzzle instead of candy. She didn't force conversations. She simply sat on the floor beside him and helped him finish it. I remember thinking, maybe life is finally giving us another chance. We dated for almost 18 months before getting married. I never rushed Ethan. Every few weeks I'd gently ask him, "What do you think about Melissa?" His answers were always short. "She's okay. She's nice. I don't know. Nothing unusual. Nothing alarming." At least, that's what I believed. After our wedding, Melissa moved into our house. She decorated the empty guest room into a bright playroom for Ethan. She learned his favorite meals. She attended his soccer games. She never missed a school event. To everyone else, she looked like the perfect stepmother. Everyone except Ethan. He thanked her. He respected her. He followed her rules. But he never called her mom, not once. At first, Melissa smiled and said it was okay. He'll come around eventually. Months passed, then years. Every Mother's Day, Ethan made one card. Only one. It always said, "For Mom." And every year, he quietly placed it on Sarah's grave. Melissa pretended it didn't hurt, but I could see it. Late at night, she'd cry beside me. "I've tried everything, Daniel." "I know. Does he hate me?" "No." "Then why won't he love me?" I honestly didn't know. One evening when Ethan was 8, I finally asked him directly, "Buddy, why don't you call Melissa Mom?" He stared at his dinner plate. "Because she's not. I know she isn't your real mother. I already have one. You can have 2 people who love you." He slowly looked at me. His eyes weren't angry. They were frightened. "I don't want another one." Then he stood up and walked upstairs. Melissa heard everything. She locked herself in our bedroom for hours. I spent the entire evening trying to comfort both of them. I convinced myself Ethan simply needed more time. Children grieve differently. That's what every parenting book said. So I waited. Another year passed, then another. Something else began bothering me. Melissa had become strangely controlling. Not toward me, toward Ethan. She insisted on packing his school bag herself. She cleaned his room even after he begged her not to. She hated when he locked his bedroom door. Children shouldn't keep secrets. She said it so often that it almost became a family slogan. If Ethan received birthday gifts, Melissa wanted to know exactly what they were. If someone gave him a notebook or diary, she'd casually flip through it. I thought she was simply trying to be involved. Looking back, I should have questioned it. Ethan also developed odd habits. He hid tiny objects around his room, a marble inside an old shoe, a folded paper beneath his mattress, a toy car inside the bathroom cabinet. When I asked why, he shrugged. "I just like knowing where things are. Kids can be strange." Again, I ignored it. One Saturday afternoon, I came home early from work. The house was unusually quiet. Melissa was upstairs. Ethan sat alone in the backyard. He wasn't playing. He was digging small holes with a stick. "What are you doing?" He quickly covered one hole with dirt. "Nothing." I laughed. "Looks like something. It's just a game." I almost walked away. Then I noticed a tiny plastic container sticking out of the soil. Before I could reach it, Ethan rushed over. "No!" His reaction startled me. He grabbed the container and held it behind his back. It's private. Private? For a 9-year-old? I frowned. What's inside? Nothing important. Melissa suddenly appeared at the back door. Her voice sounded unusually sharp. Ethan! He flinched. Actually, he looked terrified. What did I tell you about hiding things? His face turned pale. He lowered his head immediately. I'm sorry. She walked over and held out her hand. Give it to me. For several seconds, Ethan didn't move. Then he slowly handed her the plastic container. Melissa slipped it into her pocket without even looking inside. She smiled at me. He's been burying silly treasures lately, I chuckled. Boys. She laughed too, but Ethan didn't. He stared at the ground the entire time. That night, I knocked on his bedroom door. You okay, buddy? Yeah, you've seemed upset lately. I'm okay. You know you can tell me anything. He looked at me for a long moment. For one heartbreaking second, I truly believed he was about to say something important. Instead, he forced a smile. I know. Then he hugged me, longer than usual. As I walked toward my bedroom, I heard him quietly lock his door. The next morning, Melissa asked me an odd question over breakfast. If Ethan ever accused me of something crazy, I looked up. What do you mean? Oh, nothing, she laughed nervously. Kids imagine strange things sometimes. I guess you'd believe me, right? The question caught me off guard. Of course, she smiled. But something about that smile felt relieved. A few weeks later, Ethan's teacher called me. Mr. Carter, could you stop by after school? My stomach tightened immediately. When I arrived, Mrs. Collins closed the classroom door. Ethan is an excellent student. Okay, but lately he's been hiding notebooks. What do you mean? He panics if anyone touches them. I frowned. Has he written anything concerning? She hesitated. I've only seen one sentence. What did it say? She looked uncomfortable. It said, if something happens to me, Dad has to find the blue notebook before she does. Every hair on my arm stood up. Who is she? Mrs. Collins slowly shook her head. He wouldn't tell me. That evening, I drove home faster than I ever had before. Questions raced through my mind. Was someone bullying him? Was he imagining things? Had grief finally caught up with him? When I walked through the front door, the house was silent. Too silent. I called Ethan's name. No answer. Then I heard voices upstairs. Melissa's voice. Cold. Demanding. Where is it? I don't know. Don't lie to me. I said I don't know. I froze halfway up the stairs. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely. Melissa spoke again. You promised you wouldn't keep secrets from me. A trembling voice answered. I never promised. I stepped closer. Just as I reached Ethan's bedroom door, I heard something crash onto the floor. Then Ethan screamed, Dad, don't let her take the blue notebook. The moment I heard Ethan scream those words, every instinct I had as a father took over. I threw the bedroom door open so hard it slammed against the wall. Melissa spun around, startled. Ethan was on the floor beside his bed, clutching a worn blue notebook to his chest. A broken table lamp lay between them. Melissa quickly forced a smile. Daniel, thank goodness you're here. He's having another one of his episodes. I looked at Ethan. His face was ghostly white. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the notebook. No, he whispered. She's lying. Melissa sighed dramatically. He's been hiding journals again. I was only trying to calm him down. For years, I would have believed her without question. But not this time. Not after what his teacher had told me. Not after hearing Melissa demand that notebook. I walked toward Ethan instead of Melissa. Buddy, he looked into my eyes. There wasn't anger. There wasn't hatred. There was pure fear. The kind no child should ever feel inside his own home. He grabbed my arm with both hands. Dad, please don't let her read it. Melissa folded her arms. This is ridiculous. I looked at her. Why do you care so much about what's inside? I don't. You were just yelling at him. I wasn't yelling. I heard you. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in years, I noticed something I'd never paid attention to before. Whenever Melissa lied, she never blinked. She simply stared, perfectly still. I turned back to Ethan. We're leaving. Melissa frowned. What? Ethan and I are going out. Daniel, don't encourage this behavior. I'm not asking. She tried to step between us. I think we should discuss this first. No. I took Ethan's hand. We walked downstairs together. As I unlocked my truck, Ethan looked over his shoulder toward the house. Melissa was standing behind the living room curtain, watching us. She didn't wave. She didn't move. She just watched. Instead of driving around aimlessly, I took Ethan to the small lake where Sarah used to bring him to feed ducks. It was quiet, peaceful. For nearly 20 minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, I looked at him. You've been trying to tell me something for years, haven't you? His eyes filled with tears. I tried. My heart sank. What do you mean? You never listened. Those 4 words hurt more than anything I'd ever heard. He wasn't accusing me. He was simply telling me the truth. I had failed him. I'm listening now. He slowly placed the blue notebook on the bench between us. I started writing because I knew one day you'd have to believe me. My hands trembled as I opened the first page. Every page had a date. Some entries were written in the clumsy handwriting of a 5-year-old, others looked newer. The first entry read, "Melissa told me if I wanted Dad to be happy, I should never tell him when she gets angry." The next one, "She threw away the picture Mom drew with me because she said our house only has one wife now." Another, she told crying makes weak boys." I looked at Ethan. "When did this happen?" "The first month after she moved in." I kept reading. There were dozens of entries, everyone more disturbing than the last. "She says if Dad knows, he'll send me away because I'm the reason he's always sad." She told me nobody would believe a little kid. She smiled right after saying it. My stomach twisted. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I did." "When?" "The night I asked if Mom could still hear us in heaven." I remembered. Barely. He'd started to say something. Melissa had interrupted, saying he was tired. Another memory flashed into my mind. The buried plastic container, the notebooks, the locked bedroom door, the hidden toys. None of them had been games. They had been hiding places. Evidence. Then Ethan said something that made my blood run cold. "She came into my room almost every week." I stared at him. While I was sleeping, he nodded. "Sometimes she'd look through my drawers. Sometimes she'd read my papers. One night she found another notebook. What happened? She burned it in the fireplace." My hands clenched into fists. "She said if I kept writing lies," his voice cracked, "I'd make Dad hate me." I couldn't breathe. For 5 years, my son had been documenting everything because he believed one day he'd need proof. Not because he hated Melissa, because he thought no one would believe him, including me. I closed the notebook. "I'm so sorry." He looked down. "I know. I should have protected you. You didn't know." "No, I didn't want to know." Those words were harder to admit because they were true. I had mistaken silence for healing. I had mistaken fear for stubbornness. I had mistaken manipulation for kindness. When we returned home that evening, Melissa was waiting in the kitchen. She smiled as if nothing had happened. "Everything okay?" "No." She looked at me. "What happened?" I placed the blue notebook on the table. Her smile disappeared instantly. "I read it for the first time in 5 years." She looked nervous. "It's a child's imagination." "I don't think so, Daniel." I spoke to Ethan. "He lies." I slammed my hand onto the table. "My son does not lie." The entire house fell silent. Melissa stepped backward. "I've done everything for this family." "No, you've controlled this family." Her eyes hardened. "So you're choosing him?" I couldn't believe the question. "He's my son," she laughed. A cold, bitter laugh I'd never heard before. "I knew this day would come." "What does that mean?" She stared directly at Ethan. "I told you your father would eventually pick a side." Ethan moved behind me. That single movement told me everything. He wasn't hiding from an argument. He was hiding from her. Over the next several weeks, everything unraveled. I filed for divorce. My attorney advised me to document everything. Rachel remembered several strange incidents she'd ignored. Mrs. Collins provided written statements about Ethan's behavior at school. Even one of our neighbors admitted she'd once heard Melissa screaming at Ethan while I was away on a business trip. Melissa denied everything. She called Ethan manipulative. She called him disturbed. She even claimed I'd been emotionally unstable since Sarah's death. But lies become harder to maintain when enough truth begins to surface. The divorce was finalized months later. Melissa left our lives, for good. Life didn't magically become perfect afterward. Trust doesn't heal overnight. Neither do broken hearts. I found Ethan a wonderful child therapist. During one session, the therapist told me something I'll never forget. Children often stop telling the truth when they learn adults won't hear it. That sentence haunted me because it described us perfectly. Not because I didn't love my son, because I had been too desperate to believe our family was finally whole. I ignored the warning signs. I explained away his fear. I convinced myself everything was fine. Parents do that sometimes. Not out of cruelty, out of hope. But hope should never replace attention. Nearly a year later, Ethan and I visited Sarah's grave together. He placed fresh flowers beside the headstone. Then he looked at me. "Yeah, I think Mom would be proud of you now." I felt tears fill my eyes. "I hope so." He smiled. For the first time in years, it wasn't forced. It reached his eyes. Then he quietly said something I'd waited 5 long years to hear. "I know Melissa wasn't my mom." I nodded. "You were right." He took my hand. "But you never stopped being my dad." I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. I hugged him tighter than I ever had before. At that moment, I realized something. Children don't need perfect parents. They need parents who are willing to listen, even when the truth is difficult to hear. If I had listened sooner, I could have saved my son years of fear. That regret will stay with me forever. But it also taught me the greatest lesson of my life. Never dismiss a child's silence as stubbornness. Sometimes silence is the loudest cry for help. If someone you love is acting differently, don't just assume they'll grow out of it. Ask, listen, believe them enough to look deeper. Because one honest conversation can save a family, and one ignored voice can destroy it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes every child deserves to be heard. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.